Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tip. We've got another exciting episode today. We're talking about the fantasy overview of the St. Louis Blues for the upcoming 2021 season. Before we get started, guys, can you please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell? I would really appreciate the support. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Let's talk about their projected lines. So on the day of this recording, the St. Louis Blues opened up their training camp. And their lines looked like this. Brayden Schenn, Ryan O'Reilly, and David Perron on the top line. Schwartz, Robert Thomas, and Mike Hoffman on that second line. Sanford, Bozak, and Kyrou on the third line. And Clifford, Sundqvist, and Barbashev on that fourth line. We don't quite yet know their power play lines, but I imagine it should be something like this. Brayden Schenn, Ryan O'Reilly, David Perron, Mike Hoffman, and Torrey Krug. That second power play should be Schwartz, Bozak, Robert Thomas, Parayko, and Dunn. Alright guys, so now that we're done with the lines, let's talk about our Do Not Draft list. And first on that list, at 173, is Vladimir Tarasenko. Now Tarasenko is a fantastic player, but he's injured, and he's scheduled to be re-evaluated mid-February. That doesn't mean he's going to be ready mid-February. It means he's going to be re-evaluated. So honestly, we have no idea when Tarasenko is even going to be available. And ranked at 173, that's a little bit too rich for my liking. I'd rather stay away from him in that range. Next on this list, guys, is Colton Parayko, who got 28 points in 64 games last year, which is okay, but it is nothing that spectacular. He does okay in the hits and block shots category too, but nothing really to write home about, nothing that crazy. I personally can't understand why he's ranked at 179 because his production has never ever been that great. There are much better options around this range for a defenseman. Next on this list, ranked at 358 in Yahoo Pools, is Justin Faulk. And if you were MIA last season, you might think that Justin Faulk is a decent pickup, but he's not. St. Louis don't use him in an offensive role at all, and he really sucked last year, and that's not going to change. Stay away from Justin Faulk. Next on this list, guys, is Zach Sanford, who got 30 points in 58 games, which is more than a point every 2 games. So he was pretty good, right? He might be worth a late round consideration. No, he's not. If you saw the lines that I projected for St. Louis, Sanford is on the third line. Last year he did that good because he was playing alongside O'Reilly and Perron. And he only got 30 points, playing alongside those studs. So guys, if he's going to be playing on the third line, there is absolutely no fantasy value there at all for Sanford, and he should be left on your waiver wire. Last but not least on this list, guys, is someone who maybe used to be fantasy relevant when he used to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that is Tyler Bozak. Last season he managed 29 points in 67 games, which is okay, but there's no reason to draft this guy. He's going to be centering the third line, and the third line in St. Louis is nothing too special. For this reason, Tyler Bozak for me is nothing more than a streamer if St. Louis has a very favorable schedule. Alright guys, so that's it for our Do Not Draft list. Now we're going to jump right into our draft list. And first on this list, ranked at number 40, is Jordan Binnington. And I really like Binnington this season, especially because he does not have Allen as a backup anymore. Allen last year was starting 1 out of every 3 to 1 out of every 4 games and was eating up a good amount of Jordan Binnington's starts. This year he doesn't have Allen as a backup anymore. Allen was traded to Montreal. This year he has Ville Husso as a backup who has almost no NHL experience and probably will only play those back-to-back games. Mind you, St. Louis does have 10 back-to-back games, but 46 of the 56 games started for Jordan Binnington is pretty damn good. I really like him where he's currently being drafted at number 40. Next on my draft list, guys, ranked at number 50 is Ryan O'Reilly. Last year he had 61 points in 71 games, and they were almost all assists. This guy is a playmaker, he's not a goal scorer. His hot play should absolutely continue playing on an even better line with Perron and Schenn instead of Sanford this year. Next on this list, guys, is Braden Shen, and he managed 58 points in 71 games last year. He also had 119 hits, which is really good if you're in a bangers league as well, so Shen is a really nice fit over there. Currently has dual eligibility for center and right wing, but he's currently practicing on the left wing with O'Reilly and Perron. So when the season actually gets going, he may also get left wing eligibility, which would make him eligible for all three positions, which is honestly really, really valuable. The only thing is that his shooting percentage last year was over 18%, which is really high and won't be sustainable. However, I don't expect his numbers to go down that much if he does end up playing with O'Reilly and Perron. Next on this list, guys, ranked at number 90 is Torrey Krug. And I really, really like Torrey Krug at this ranking. He'll be taking over for Alex Pietrangelo and get all that top power play time like he was doing on Boston. So honestly, his numbers should look very, very similar to his numbers on Boston because he'll be joining a very good power play just like he had on Boston. So honestly, his numbers should be super, super similar to what he's done in the past, and he's a really good pick at number 90. Next on this list, guys, ranked at number 75 in Yahoo Drafts is Mike Hoffman, and he managed 59 points in 69 games last year with the Florida Panthers. He also managed 214 shots on goal, which is a lot and way more than any other player on the St. Louis Blues. So if you want the safest option on this St. Louis Blues teams, it's Mike Hoffman. Every night he'll get you some points just from shots on goal. If he doesn't get you an actual point that night, he's a very, very safe option to plug into your lineup every night just for the sheer amount of shots on goal that he gets. He's currently practicing with Robert Thomas and Jaden Schwartz, which is a pretty decent line, but I expect most of his production to come from the power play because that's where he really shines. Alright guys, so next on this list is David Perron, and he managed 60 points in 71 games last year. Nobody saw that coming. He was an absolute steal in most fantasy drafts last season. Can he do it again? Maybe not to the extent that he did last year, but I still think he can have a very, very good fantasy season. He managed 166 shots on goal last year, which is the most out of any player on the Blues from last year. And yeah, his 15.06 shooting percentage is a little bit high, and that won't be sustainable. But if he keeps playing on that top power play, and he keeps playing on that top line with O'Reilly, there's no real reason to believe that his numbers will dip that significantly. Especially with that new power play with Mike Hoffman on it, he might get a whole bunch more assists this year. So yeah, it's possible that he repeats his total point production, maybe a few more assists, maybe a couple less goals, but David Perron, to me, is a pretty safe option where he's currently being drafted. So next on this list is Jaden Schwartz, and last year he managed 57 points in 71 games, which is pretty good, right? The only thing I'm worried about is I think he might be the one to be demoted off that top power play. If he does get demoted off that top unit, his rank of 114 suddenly becomes a lot less attractive to me. So if you can avoid him in your fantasy drafts, but I think he's a pretty good pickup if he does end up playing that top power play time. We just don't know yet what's going to happen with that. So let's keep an eye on their training camp and see what their power play looks like. If he's not, at that point I'm a little bit more worried about it, and I'd rather pick the next guy on this list. That next guy is Robert Thomas, currently ranked at 508, which I think is a mistake because he had a really nice season last year. He ended up with 42 points in 66 games, and he was tossed all around the lineup last year and spent a lot of it on the third line. So if he plays with Mike Hoffman and Jaden Schwartz this year, his numbers can really, really improve, and he could possibly be a point per game guy. Yeah, he's not going to be getting that power play time, so no, he won't be a point per game guy, but he could probably get somewhere pretty close, and last year his numbers weren't half bad. I absolutely love drafting Robert Thomas with your last pick of the draft. So that's it for our draft list. Let's jump into our keep an eye out for list. And there's only 2 guys on this list, and to me, none of these guys are worth a draft pick. But if an injury were to happen to somebody on St. Louis, then suddenly you might want to consider these guys. First is Vince Dunn, ranked at 317. He only managed 23 points last year, which is nothing to write home about, but if something were to happen to Torrey Krug with an injury or something, Vince Dunn will probably be the one that's promoted to that top power play. If that's the case, you absolutely should scoop him up at some point during the season if that were to happen to Torrey Krug. And Torrey Krug usually misses a game or two here and there, so Vince Dunn would be a great fill-in during that time. Next on this list, guys, is Scott Perunovic, who was drafted 45th overall in 2018, and he's also a defenseman, and he's one of St. Louis's top prospects. There's a good chance that he could make the team this year too. I don't necessarily see it happening directly out of training camp, but if there are injuries, he might scooch his way into there. Now, if the injury is to Torrey Krug or Colton Parayko or Vince Dunn, he might start seeing some power play time, probably on the second unit, but he's definitely somebody to keep an eye out for, since he's such an intriguing prospect. Last but not least, guys, on this list is Jordan Kyrou, and he has no value where he's currently ranked in the lineup on that third line, but if there is an injury to that top six and Kyrou is the benefactor and moves up to that top line or that second line, then Kyrou is definitely someone you can add to your team because he is a very intriguing young player. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through the video. I really appreciate the support. Please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a comment, and let me know how I can improve these videos. Until next time, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.